Welcome to Still Evolving, where we explore the truth behind lasting performance and resilience. Rather than relying on perfection or superhuman ability, our conversation will highlight how real strength emerges through simple, intentional habits grounded in self-compassion, adaptability, and the ability to grow through life's inevitable setbacks. Today's guest is Bill Maggio. Bill is founder and CEO of Dualign, a strategic advisory practice that works with founders, CEOs, and boards of growth stage and private equity-backed companies navigating scale, AI adoption, and major organizational inflection points. He brings more than 30 years of leadership experience across technology services and workforce transformation, including 2 decades at GP Strategies, where he most recently served as co-chief executive officer, leading the company through a period of significant growth and transformation while helping shape its AI's workforce strategy. Bill is known for his heart and head leadership framework, which integrates the human instincts that build trust with the analytical discipline required to drive strong performance. Please welcome Bill to Still Evolving. Bill, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today on Still Evolving. Grateful to have you here.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate the invite and looking forward to this, Amy.
Bill, can we start off we'd love to learn more about you. So can you share a bit on your journey, where you came from, what you're up to now?
Sure. Be happy to. So I'll try to keep it short. So I was born in New York City, out in Queens, grew up in New Jersey. So I spent my whole life in the pretty much the Northeast. I'm living in Connecticut now, so a Northeast kind of guy. From my career standpoint, been kind of a zigzag kind of career over my life. Started quite a while ago, back in the late 80s, working for Bell Communications Research, which was a spinoff of Bell Labs, and doing technical work. Ended up getting to early internet kind of internet working, started a company with other guys that were there, ended up catching the internet, the dot-com wave. So we kind of got, it was a little bit of timing and good luck. Learned a lot about challenges and growing businesses at a young age there. Ended up selling in the late 90s, stayed in the tech industry for a little while longer. The dot-com bubble burst. Then I said I want out. I decided I wanted to make things. So I bought a vending machine manufacturing business. So I did that for a few years. That didn't work out as well. Another challenge there that I learned a lot from. Got back into corporate life. And that was where I spent 20 years at a company, GP Strategies, which was a global workforce transformation learning company, and ultimately rising to the co-CEO level. So
Wow.
I just left there recently and have started my own firm called Dualign, which is an executive advisory, strategic advisory firm, working with boards, CEOs, owners, founders, kind of helping scale, navigate challenges and inflection points in a variety of different challenging circumstances organizations face now.
Wow, quite a journey. I have so many follow-on questions. You mentioned at the different chapters, experiencing challenge, adversity, starting back with the dot-com bubble. And then certainly I would imagine as an executive leader of a large consultancy firm, it was not for the weak of heart, I'm sure, as well. Talk a little bit, Bill, of some of your takeaways. What have been your lessons learned, perhaps in your own experience as a leader faced with that adversity? What helped you and your team not just survive it, but grow and innovate through it? And perhaps also maybe some takeaways of what you wouldn't want to do again.
Sure. Yeah, it was a lot of things. A lot of it was learned the hard way, but some things I've learned along the way is as a leader, you really need to ground yourself in integrity and empathy. And some of that's just kind of a bit, I guess it was just innate. My father was an entrepreneur. He had an architectural firm. So I kind of watched him growing up, and you just the mundane, you got to go in and do the work, do the administrative work, do the work to run the business, lead the people, manage people. And I watched him just doing things like what he was saying he was going to do, building trust and being vulnerable if he needed to be. So I think over the years, I've learned that through some challenging circumstances where when I had my network and system and network business back in the 90s during the dot-com era, we were trying to pivot from one type of a business model from a value-added reseller to a professional services, full only doing professional services type of work. Had been doing kind of both. We were very aggressive. We had been growing, just growing, never facing challenges. The only challenges was, could we hire enough people and deal with all the sales that were coming in? It was kind of a crazy time.
Wow.
So as we were evolving, it ended up burning a lot of cash faster than we expected. And we had hired a professional chief operating officer at that point, and he was warning us. He's like, you guys are doing too much too fast. And it ended up it came to a fruition, and we had to make a major decision to restructure the company, stop some of the expansion. But what I learned there was really, it was a humbling experience. And when I had to get up in front of the organization and tell them we're going to have to do layoffs and stop the expansion, there was a lot of vulnerability because that was part of it was my own doing
Right.
and the cause of it. So I learned kind of early on to be transparent, authentic, and vulnerable, and kind of continuing that has taken me throughout my entire career. Because what I've learned is that really builds trust. And once you trust, it's a compounding sort of, you put it in the bank account, it compounds because people will, if you once you earn trust, no matter what the relationship is, with business or otherwise, that's how you get people and leaders can really get organizations and people to move mountains.
Hmm.
That's probably one of the biggest learnings I've had.
Starting with, we talk a lot about in high performance the role of accountability. And I think for leadership, you just highlighted the most powerful form of accountability is self accountability,
Hmm.
right? Because it then kind of cascades down. If you're willing to hold yourself accountable and you're able to really be transparent and genuine in sharing, yeah, I hold myself accountable. This was the impact, and being real and communicating that impact. Trust can't, it doesn't avoid people's reactions, their letdown, the impact necessarily, but it does signal a willingness then to own and then kind of empower everybody to move together. Versus if you come into it with a bit of a defensiveness or a very kind of coded posture, like, how can we message this? It makes me cringe. All you are doing is kind of feeding skepticism, which then can breed fear, which then we know out of that place, a lot of a more unhealthy, if not toxic behavior can kind of transpire. So I appreciate your willingness to share that takeaway that it starts with holding ourselves accountable and being real in that, not disregarding our impact on others, but really owning it and saying, okay, now how can we best move forward? How can we take the best next step?
Yeah, because I've seen a lot in the past where you try to like you said, you're trying to message something, picking the right corporate words, leaving
Yeah,
certain facts out. But I've learned the best is just to be, straight up as as best you can with
sure.
the real the facts. People are adults. You got to be real with them.
Yeah. Yeah. You really rob them of their agency if you're just trying to, like, maybe it is from a place of good intention. You're trying to protect them. Well, you're really not. You're robbing them of their opportunity to kind of cope and robbing of them opportunity to grow in strength despite the challenge that everyone is facing. Absolutely. You talk about your team. I'm curious, Bill, the experiences have been a lesson, right? Like you've had an opportunity to learn from them. But when we talk about the power of connection that comes in leadership, sometimes I talk with leaders and it can be fairly isolating, right? Like,
Mhm.
how in your journey, who have you connected with? Who do you find strength or challenge or an opportunity to kind of learn in conversation with? What does that look like for you?
It's just an ongoing process, I guess, from team members I've worked with. As you said, the further up in your organization, it is kind of very lonely at the top because the buck stops with you. But
Right.
there's been a few people earlier in my career that ended up being co-founders in that company I started in the 90s that one of which I still keep in touch with today. So he was one of our our sales leader, top sales guy. So kind of worked with him over many years. We kind of collaborate. And then as my career's advanced, it's been kind of staying in touch with some folks I went to college with, talking different various business ideas and challenges they're facing. It's kind of like sometimes it's over, playing golf,
Yeah,
just keeping in touch.
sure.
And then in the work life over the last 20 years when I was at GP Strategies, a lot was through peers and then my direct reports where I kind of tended to lead not I think we always looked at each other as we were on the same team. We were all level working to solve either client problems, business challenges, what have you together. And it wasn't a hierarchical kind of relationship. It was more like we were literally peers trying to solve whatever the problem of the day, week, month, quarter was.
Hmm.
So that just kind of that was a mindset I always had, and I think I've heard that from some of the leaders that worked for me that appreciated that I wasn't very directive. There were points where you had to be,
Sure.
but
Sure.
by and large, it was very collaborative, and the way I kind of used had various types of meetings, company wide town halls. You got a various staff meetings, leadership meetings, but where I built a lot of deeper relationships was one-on-ones, just regular one-on-one cadence. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk about business.
Mhm.
We would just talk about what's going on in life. Where to go on vacation? How's the family? Might be
Yeah.
a quick 15-minute check-in and those sort of things. And I would remember, I would take notes and I would maybe a couple of months later, oh, how did you go? How was your vacation to so and so? And those are the kind of things that if you can keep, there's business, you got to get business, the business imperatives that have to be taken care of, but it's all executed and delivered through human beings. So
Right.
you got to make sure there's that relationship as well there, because that's how when things get really tough, when that you have that strong relationship, they'll be behind you and you can count on them.
Absolutely. For some people, more of that relationship oriented leadership style feels a bit more of their comfort zone. It's kind of like where they've always lived, how they've always operated. And then for others, it's been more task oriented, right? Having some deliberate reminders, or to your example of imposing some type of intentional opportunity for that connection, it can be really helpful. Starting off and having the cue, reminding yourself, starting off every meeting with talking about the human, not
Mhm.
the deliverable, and taking an intentional note on your calendar, or some type of contact card so that you can jog that memory
Yeah.
right before you see them again. So, for some of us, it feels very natural. For others, it's okay if you're more oriented toward a task. It's just an awareness that perhaps when you are leading your people, that reminder that it's through the humans, right? Like it's human performance. It's that is needed, and how can you adapt to be able to connect. Absolutely. You also mentioned mindset there for a minute. I wanted to explore that and learn, when you think of the leadership mindset, and how would you describe yours in terms of, it could be tackling a challenge, but it also could be more in business strategy or in operations, or like you were talking earlier, leading your people. But what aspects or qualities of mindset have you found that has evolved for you, that has really been impactful and meaningful to be able to show up as you want to be as a leader?
Yeah, and it's kind of a few different facets there. One is, I tend to have a growth mindset. So I'm always looking, what can we do next? How do we evolve? Because I've always taken the mindset, but in business and, it's kind of in life too. If you're not growing, you're going the opposite direction, shrinking,
Yeah.
or whatever. So always looking, taking a mindset of what's next and how to grow. Another facet is that I tend to look at challenges as a gift or opportunity.
Hmm.
So be able to consciously come up with, if I'm in the middle of a crisis, when there's no end in sight, but there are moments where it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm ever going to
Right.
get out of here. But I
Yeah.
try to kind of take a step back and go, hey, this will come to pass. I will learn more from it. I will get something out of this. There will be the new opportunity, or I will get more education through this pain I'm going through. And
Hmm.
that's the gift. So
Hmm.
kind of always looking as like never taking a victim mentality.
Hmm.
I just have never had that in my life.
Hmm. Yeah, those two are incredibly powerful. One, just kind of remembering that we are living and working within a very dynamic condition. So if we are not evolving along with it through the opportunity of learning from those around us,
Mhm.
the events around us, our experience, it can become a very static place. And like you said, if you're not moving forward and growing, then you're actually kind of falling behind, because everyone and everything else around us is. And I appreciate the mindset of challenge versus really considering something as a threat. I've had some conversations with guests recently around this from a neurophysiological perspective, just a healthy reminder. I think I mentioned this a pod or two ago, but really when we take that perspective of looking at the events before us, the situation that we're find ourselves in as that challenge, our ability to be ready and think clearly, flexibly, brainstorm, maintain emotional regulation so we aren't catastrophizing everything. We really have increased odds of being able to execute in that fashion. Versus if we perceive or attribute the situation as a threat, it really, even neurophysiologically, can bring on such a reaction and an inability to focus that it becomes very difficult to show up, I think, in the way that we like to. So, absolutely, opportunities to learn, opportunities to grow, evolve, and certainly innovate through the disruption. Absolutely. This is a long journey though, Bill. Like I think back, I have a daughter in college, and I remind, she's like, "Oh, I'm so tired. Midterms just happened." And I kind of chuckled and I reminded her, I was like, "Yeah, but you're almost halfway done." right? You're almost halfway there. And then the real marathon begins,
Yeah,
right? Because some of our industries, there's seasonality to it. Some of our performance domains, we have preseason, then season and postseason. But when we think about our professional journey, particularly, it's more than a marathon. So I'm curious for you, there's been many chapter leadership roles, but what has helped you sustain high performance over time? Because the professional journey is more than that 26 miles for sure.
that's for sure. And I have three adult daughters that are two of them are the late 20s, one's early 20s, and they're kind of starting that journey, which by the now that I look back on it, is gone really fast. Uh,
Yeah.
but such is life. But how I try to maintain my edge and my health and stress management, stress levels, etc. It's a lot through exercise.
Okay.
So that's one aspect of it. So I'll tend to do cardio and strength training a few times a week, get some walking in. So I make time for that. It's not like if I have time to do it, you have to
Right.
schedule part of my life. So I have to do that. I also love cooking. So what I've found in cooking, and particularly over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years where my career was just, you can't get nothing's really finished. You're leading through others and executing through others. So, but what I liked about cooking is like, I could get a recipe and I can get all my ingredients, get it done, and then, cook it, serve it, and it's done. And the project is done. Oh,
That's that sense of accomplishment.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was that
absolutely.
that's nice. And then I spent a lot of time with my wife. She's a coach. She does leadership and
Okay.
mindset coaching herself.
Very cool.
So we spend a lot of time together. We like traveling and foodies. So
Yeah.
that's kind of fun stress relief. So we enjoy that as well.
Wow, you really highlight those kind of core deposits like that we make for our recovery or our fueling, whether it's like the connection with others, having that hobby, like that adult play, right? It could be in the kitchen, it could be on the walk, it could be traveling. So important, especially when we talk about being able to cope with the load that we all carry from many roles in our lives. We talked today about personally and professionally, but there's many roles that we carry. That aerobic exercise, the movement, and how important that is, and certainly strength training. I'll throw in there as well. Our physical coaches at AT Performance would be not happy if I didn't mention that one. But yes, so important, and it's really what you captured is that holistic high performance. And going back to the comment about leadership, right? If we're talking about high performers, we're talking about the human. So how do we take care of our whole system? So very much appreciate those reminders, Bill. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's a lot of fun.